Before Dark Souls 3 was released, the series creator Miyazaki stated that it would be the last in the series, which is a shame because it's one of the most difficult and satisfying video game series of all time. Starting with Demon Souls back in 2009, the genre that From Software created evolved into a finely tuned machine designed to punish every mistake made by the player, but ultimately molding them into a soul-harvesting, demon-slaying champion. From Software is still quiet about Bloodborne, which has similar combat and atmosphere, but it's still the end of an era with Dark Souls hanging up its bloodied armor. So what is out there that could try to fill the void left by Dark Souls' retirement? Enter Nioh. Not that one. Nope, still not that one. Ah, that's the one. At first glance, Nioh looks like a Dark Souls clone, but once you dig a little deeper, you'll see it's an almost evolution of what Miyazaki started. You see, other games have tried to mimic the formula, Lords of the Fallen being the most recent of the bunch, but none of them have really succeeded in recreating what makes Dark Souls work so well. Lords of the Fallen showed that it's not as easy as it looks. The camera was far too slow and lazy, the combat felt too heavy, and enemies all seemed very similar, which made for a game that felt like a cheap imitation instead of a completely new experience. Nioh takes the best aspects of the Dark Souls franchise and makes subtle tweaks and additions, making it feel slightly different but still responsive and deep. Even though the game lives in darkness, the Japanese setting changes the entire feel of the game. The huge gothic castles are replaced with villas, long swords are swapped out for katanas, and enemies range from simple swordsmen to toxic zombies and giants. The overall gameplay remains untouched for the most part. Clicking on the right thumbstick locks onto enemies, you can still dodge and roll, which affects your stamina, or ki as it's called in Nioh, and even though you never wield a shield, you can still use your weapon to block. You might be thinking right now that it sounds like Tecmo Koei just made an Asian themed Dark Souls, but there is another layer added to make the combat not only flow better, but require even more skill. The first big change is the addition of stances. The main character has a high stance, which is slower but causes greater damage, a low stance, which sacrifices damage for quicker attacks, and a mid stance, which balances damage and speed. Stances can be changed on the fly both in and out of combat, which gives the player more options. For example, when I was playing, if I was in a one-on-one fight, the high stance would let me dispatch single enemies quickly. But if I was facing off against a group, the mid stance would allow me to manage my ki better while still being able to do damage and keep my guard up. If that wasn't enough of a change for you, the stamina meter has also been tweaked. In Dark Souls, when you found yourself out of stamina, you could be staggered while blocking or lose the ability to attack. But in Nioh, if you completely drain your stamina, you can actually start to keel over and are left defenseless for a few seconds. The guys at GameSpot weren't too fond of this, but I have a feeling that's because they didn't pay attention during the stance reset tutorial. Every time you finish an attack or a combo, there's a window of opportunity to gain a majority of your stamina back by hitting the R1 button at the right time. So if you're battling an enemy and you finish a combo, pay attention to the ki meter, and you will see part of it quickly turn white. Once it's full, if you hit the R1 button, you will regain all of that ki, and your character will automatically reset his stance. Think of it like a Gears of War style active reload in a Dark Souls game, and you'll have a decent understanding of how it works. On top of all that, there's also a kind of skill tree for each weapon style, which you can use to unlock new combos and attacks. I actually played a majority of the demo not knowing it was there, and once I discovered it and spent all my skill points, it added a whole new level to the combat. The combos in Dark Souls are very limited, so when Nioh gave me almost 15 different combos for the katana I was using, I felt like a kid in a candy store. I never expected to see something like this in a Dark Souls style game, but now that I've seen it, I kind of wish it was in other games because it made my progression seem far more substantial. The differences don't end with the combat. There are also no bloodstains that show how players met their demise. Instead, they are replaced with summoning points. When a player dies, a bloodstain and sword are left where they fell, and if you choose to, you can summon a revenant, an AI-controlled avatar of their character, to duel with you. Defeating them grants you their gear and even their experience that you can use to level up. The revenants are formidable, and battles can be challenging, but it's still a huge difference from the excitement of Dark Souls PvP. The only complaints I have are that the bosses were pretty straightforward and didn't require any real strategy or critical thinking. Also, the number of healing items received from resting at the shrines, which act like bonfires, was very limited, forcing me to farm basic enemies to get enough healing items to be able to stand a chance against the bosses. Design like that breaks the flow of the game, and I hope it's fixed in the final release, either by adding a store at the shrine itself, or have a way to upgrade how many healing items you get for resting at the shrine. The Nioh demo was still an alpha build, but graphically it was mediocre. The enemy design was pretty basic, character and environment textures were slightly muddy, and the lighting wasn't as natural as it is in games like Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne. Luckily the game is a ways off, so they have plenty of time to polish things up a bit before its final release. Nioh is still nowhere near being completed, and I'm already craving more of it. Hopefully Tecmo Koei utilizes the feedback from the alpha and uses it to craft something really special. They're definitely on the right track. Playing the alpha, everything just felt right within the first few minutes. As long as they stay the course and clean everything up, the final product may just be better than its predecessor.